Hello. So today I am back with another video, and I am going to be talking about writing an introduction or writing a first chapter to a story. So obviously, if you're interested in writing any kind of story, right, whether it be a comic or a film or a novel, everybody knows that the intro or the hook to a story is extremely important because that's what first draws the reader in, and also getting from chapter one to chapter two is probably the most important transition, right? It is the kind of the linchpin of whether the reader even wants to kind of keep engaging with your series. And so I'm going to first go over a few principles that I think all great first chapters share, and then I'm going to be going over three examples, right? So I'll be going over Avatar, The Last Airbender, Naruto, the Japanese manga, and One Piece, another Japanese manga. Number one, because I am firstly very familiar with the series, and number two, because I think these three series in particular just get the fundamentals down extremely well. Cool, so let's get started. So first, the principles of what makes a great first chapter. So I think there are three main principles that make up a great first chapter. Number one is context, right? Context as in world building. What kind of world is this? And you need to have a very specific clue as to what kind of world this is, right? What is quote unquote the magic system if it's a fantasy series? What is the vibe? What is the mood? Things like that, and you need to do it in a very strategic way. Number two is obviously the main character, right? The main character, and the main character needs to have a critical flaw, right? So based on the context, right, you need to introduce a critical flaw as to why the main character cannot fulfill their role in this context. And number three, I need to have a promise, right? I need to have a promise for what that character is going to achieve by the end of the series, right? And so that will kind of drive the series forward, and it'll promise a very clear end as to okay, uh, I should keep reading this series because by the end this will happen, and when this happens, it'll be great. So three things: context, character, promise. Right? Context, character, and promise. So let's go over the examples. So number one is Avatar: The Last Airbender. Very popular series. Ran on Nickelodeon for a while, and it's so popular that the intro, the kind of the opening sequence, has kind of become a meme. I think it starts with water, air, earth, fire, something like that. I remember the order, but basically the even just the opening sequence introduces us to the fact that this world is filled with these people called benders, right? So and they can do all these martial arts moves to manipulate the elements around them, right? So airbenders can manipulate air, waterbenders can move water at will with kind of with their hands, firebenders, earthbenders, same thing. Um, and so that very instantly covers the context, right? What kind of world is this? It is a world full of martial arts and bending, right? Kind of element fantasy bending. And then we are immediately introduced to kind of the larger context in that there are four nations, each based on one of the four elements, and the Fire Nation is currently attacking them all, right? So that is just more context as to, okay, this is the fantasy system, and this is what's happening in the world right now. And then we're introduced to the main character, Aang. So Aang is the mythical avatar. Mythical as in, okay, he's not mythical, but mythical as in he is, uh, there's a lot of lore around him, but like not mythical as in he's not real. So Aang is the avatar who can manipulate all four elements at the same time, right? So most people can only bend one element, but the avatar can bend all four elements. And so Aang is the avatar, but again, his critical flaw. Every main character has to have a critical flaw. He is extremely immature, young, and carefree, and so he does not care about the outside world, and he runs away from his responsibilities a lot. So that is kind of the critical flaw that Aang has, and it's also why he can't fulfill his role as the avatar right now. Cool. And then the promise at the end of the intro is that Aang, the Avatar, will fulfill his responsibility and he will bring peace to all four nations. Right. So currently, the world is at war. The Fire Nation is attacking pretty much every other nation at the same time. But Aang will bring peace to all four nations, and so you should keep watching the series until Aang does that. And so again, very masterful intro, and they do it all inside the opening sequence. Right. So not even the first episode on the opening sequence, right? You have the context, you have the character with a flaw, and you have the promise. And lo and behold, all all those things are kind of fulfilled, and by the end of the series, Aang has brought peace to all four nations, and he has become kind of the avatar that he was supposed to be. Cool. Okay, so that is kind of the main. That is the kind of the main like throughput of Avatar, and it is a really very solid piece of storytelling, and it's used in a lot of classes to kind of convey what kind of series you should write because it's just so tightly done. Okay. So that's Avatar, and then let's move on to another one called One Piece. So One Piece is the longest running Japanese manga written by a single author of all time. It has been running since 1997, and it is still going today as of 2026. So it has been 30 years by the same guy. So he started when he was like 22 years old, and now he's over 50, and he's just been doing this his entire life. And so it's kind of a meme that, One Piece will never end, and I don't know, who knows? Maybe one day it'll end, but for now, we have no way of knowing that. Cool, okay, so One Piece. So the first page of One Piece does a very good job of setting the context, and so let's get into it. So One Piece is a world of pirates, right? So most of the world is covered in water, and most of the main characters are all pirates. And a long time ago, there was this pirate named Gold Roger who. Before he was executed by the government, he told everybody, I left my treasure in this island somewhere. You should all go find it. And then he dies. And then everybody wants to become a pirate and find that treasure. And so the golden age of piracy begins. And so all of that is in the first page, right? Right. So instantly we have the context. We have, this is the world of pirates, and this is the promise actually. This is the goal, right? Somebody will find Gold Roger's final treasure, and then when that happens, everything will be great. And then immediately afterwards, we're introduced to the main character named Luffy, right? So Luffy is a young boy, but he also has a very critical flaw. So inside the first chapter, he eats something called a devil fruit, right? So this is another piece of context, right? A devil fruit. So in this world, right, of pirates, there is this thing called devil fruits, which give you a special power, right? So if you eat the rubber fruit, for example, which Luffy does, then you can stretch like rubber, right? So you basically gain like a superhero kind of like superpower. But the critical flaw is that you can't swim, right? And if you're a pirate and can't swim, that's a very big flaw. And so instantly, Luffy is imbued with both a power and a flaw at the same time. And we get some context as to what this world is. It is a world full of pirates and devil fruits. Cool. Okay, so that's kind of the main storyline of the first chapter. And so Luffy's goal is to find Gold Roger's treasure and to become the Pirate King. And also, One Piece is actually unique for having two promises. Another promise is that in the first chapter, Luffy is met with a kind of an older brother figure named Shanks, an older pirate, and Shanks sees a lot of promise in Luffy, and so he gives him his hat, right? He gives Luffy his iconic straw hat, and he says, "Give it back to me when you're a great pirate," right? And so we have another promise there, right? So number one, Luffy will find a Gold Roger's treasure, and he will become kind of the Pirate King, which is what he always says, and he will return Shanks' hat to him when he becomes a great pirate, right? So we have two promises, and thousands and millions of fans around the world have been waiting for over 30 years for that promise to be fulfilled, because of just like how powerful an impact that first chapter made, right? So instantly we have the context, pirates, devil fruits. We have the main character, Luffy can't swim, and then we have the promises. Luffy will find the treasure, and he will return the hat to Shanks. Cool. So those are the main points that the first chapter of One Piece covers. Okay, last one. Let's go over Naruto. So Naruto is another Japanese manga. It also ran for a very long time. It ran for almost 20 years, I believe. Almost 20 years. But it was also very popular just because of how powerful kind of the opening chapter and like the first kind of section of the manga were. So let's get started. So Naruto, from the outset, we get from the first page again, we get told that there was a ninja village and a giant demon fox attacked the village years ago. Okay, so instantly we have context. It is a world of ninjas, and there are demon foxes, right? So they're basically giant demon animals, and so it's kind of like a fantasy setting. And then we're also introduced to Naruto, right? So Naruto is a young ninja in training, but he's very unpopular for no reason, right? So for the first chapter, it's kind of a mystery as to why everybody hates him so much, right? But everybody hates Naruto. Everybody hates Naruto, and so his goal, his promise, is to become the Hokage, or basically the president of his village, right? Or the leader of his village. And so instantly we have a promise, right? By the end of the series, Naruto will become Hokage. He will become the kind of the president or the leader of his village, because he was so kind of outcast and so unpopular that his desire is to be accepted by everybody, and so he wants to become mayor of his village, essentially. And then, speaking of the critical flaw, right? So at first we think that his critical flaw is that he's just not very good at being a ninja, but actually it turns out his Naruto's critical flaw is that he is the demon fox, and so big twist. Turns out that basically a long time ago, when the demon fox attacked the village, somebody, I won't get into spoilers here, but somebody sealed the demon fox inside of Naruto, and so he actually is the demon fox that that terrorized the village all those years ago. And so that's why everybody hates him. It turns out. And so this is Naruto's kind of critical flaw / superpower at the same time. Is that he wants to be loved, but he is also the kind of like the boogeyman that the parents tell their kids about, right? And so this chapter, I think, also is very, very masterfully done, right? Because in this short chapter, we have so many clues, so many hints as to how the sword works and what this series will bring us going forward, right? We know that it's a world of ninjas. We know that there are kind of demon foxes with like animals. We know that Naruto is kind of the main guy. He has a critical flaw, which is that he is the monster that the parents warn the kids about at night, right? So he's kind of he's very, very hated and kind of outcast, but he wants to be loved, and he wants to basically become mayor of his village, and so that's the promise by the end of the series. Cool. Okay, so I just went over basically the main principles of storytelling and 3 series that I think do this really, really well. I think there's a reason why these 3 series are so popular. Is because they get their core fundamentals right, and their beginning, like their first parts, are still iconic to this day, just because of how strong an impact they leave. And if you really break them apart, right, like even stories are kind of like equations, right? You can break them apart very formulaically, so that you can see, oh, this is why this story is successful, this is why this is fun, this is why this intrigues me, and this is why this series is boring, and so forth. And so even in fun, even in entertainment, as Joseph Campbell has told us, there is a formula. And so if you want to write a good series, if you want to write a good script or comic or novel or anything, or essay or anything like that, I need to have a very, very strong kind of very, very strong sense of what kind of like the meta principles of a good story are, and you can customize them to your wishes, right? So you can make it about, you know, fairies on a magical island somewhere in space or something like that, right? So these actual kind of content doesn't matter, but kind of the monomyth of what makes a good story, I believe, will never change. And so I hope this helped you if you're trying to write something, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Right? See you guys.